Feeling good with the...
Yep.
Okay. We rolling?
As soon as he tells us that we are rolling on audio, I'm rolling here. And let me get down on the seat for an eye line. So the first thing is name and instrument and bands.
My name's Tom Colletta. I'm a lead singer.
Just look over here if you could.
And I've been a lead singer for a long time. I've sang with a band. When I first started singing, I sang in a band called The Click from Nashua, New Hampshire. We played one gig at UNH. Nervous Disorder was after that. We actually put out a cassette tape. This is Nashua, New Hampshire. This is not Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And I moved to Portsmouth and I joined a group known as Gandhi's Lunchbox, which we had some acclaim. And I played harmonica a little bit back then. And after Gandhi's Lunchbox, I joined my current group, Jupiter 2, and I picked up a theremin because I cannot play guitar. And they said, finally, Colletta, we found an instrument you can play by waving your hands around like a crazy person and making a ton of noise. I guess that's my resume. Well, that's pretty sad, isn't it?
One other question. Do you have, does anybody have Bob Ford's cell phone number?
I do.
Because he said he would come over at 9 if we had space.
Well, he may, the reason I am in a band in Portsmouth, New Hampshire is because of Bob Ford. We worked for the same book and music store, and my store was in Nashua, New Hampshire, where I grew up, and his store was in Newington, and both those stores went out of business, and they decided to merge and move to Kittery, Maine. This is why I am in the music scene here. And I had an apartment, like $400 a month, and it was a really crappy apartment somewhere on Union Street. It was like a top floor. It didn't even have a shower, you know. And Bob had like 4 rooms on Wybird Street, where apparently Cam Gunn heard us perform as a teenager. And that's how I came to Portsmouth, really, is through the job, and Bob gave me a place to live. And when I first started working, and this may be in a previous interview I've done, in which case you can just edit this out, I moved to Portsmouth, and everybody who was working with Bob, setting up a new bookstore, said, Bob, your band is great, but you don't have a singer. And I had already sang in this band, Nervous Disorder, who had performed with the Liars and the Del Fuegos and the Neighborhoods, and you name it. I was lucky. I grew up in Nashua, and I knew a guy who had bands from Boston come up and play. It was sort of I wouldn't call it post-punk. You'd call it new wave era. I wouldn't call it Del Fuegos post-punk or new wave, but I got to know all those guys. They're all close friends of mine. You know, as much as the people in this music scene, like Fly Spinach Fly and the Queers, are friends of mine. The Queers and the Del Fuegos and the Neighborhoods we played a lot of gigs with them. Well, there weren't that many original bands in New Hampshire at that time. There were none. It was, Savoy Truffle, who were playing Grateful Dead songs. No, they're a great band, and they were quite good. But, they're not going to open for the Neighborhoods. I got paid $50. Maybe nothing. We didn't care. I had made it in 1980, dude. Before I moved to Portsmouth, I had made it in the music industry. I had opened for the Del Fuegos, the Neighborhoods, and the Liars. Are you frickin' kidding me? The Liars, to me, are the greatest rock and roll band to this day in the history of music. And they're unknown. It's not the L-I-A-R-S from Brooklyn. It's the L-Y-R-E-S from Boston. That's all you need to know. Oh, they toured Japan and, Norway. Quite frankly, the lead singer is a crazy motherfucker. Might have been why I liked them. I consider them to be, they influenced me a heck of a lot musically. We did get to perform with them once. If you're from New Hampshire, it's really hard to get a gig in Boston. And we finally got a gig in Boston. Upstairs at the Rat. on a Friday night, and the Red Sox were in town. The Rat was in Kenmore Square. If people don't know where the Rat is, it's like 2 blocks from Fenway Park. So that place was banged out. I went on a Sunday night to see the Queers upstairs at the Rat, and me and Bob Ford were the only people there. I was wearing a very plush green velvet coat. And I remember Joe King saying to me, "Tom, you look like a Puerto Rican prostitute." I consider that to be a badge of honor, because I've always wanted to be a Puerto Rican prostitute, really. Not so much. But we played upstairs at the Rat, and Jeff Connolly, who was the lead guy in the Liars, apparently had heard our band or heard of us somewhere. Bob Ford of Gandhi's Lunchbox was obsessed with the Vox Continental. Oh, this is a story I have not told. And we had a Vox Continental that worked pretty well, but not that well. So Jim Tierney, mastermind here in the Portsmouth music scene, he had a Vox Continental. The keys, the thing about the Vox Continental, it sounds kind of like a Farfisa or something like that. It's a keyboard. And this is the instrument that the Liars live and die by. And the keys are the keys that are normally white on a keyboard are black, and the keys that are normally black are white. But what Jim Tierney's keyboard had, because he bought it at some place and it was pristine, had the case that carried the S legs that you would put in with wing nuts. And this fellow, Jeff Connolly, would travel the world, and he has never seen a case that carried the legs for his keyboard. Bob Ford had 25 cents in his pocket when we went in there, and to play the Rat, you didn't get paid to play upstairs the Rat. There were about 200 people there, and it's upstairs in the loft. It was probably illegal. Homeless people were singing with us. And next thing you know, Bob's drinking a Heineken. I'm like, "Bob, what the heck's going on?" "Oh, I sold Tierney's keyboard to Jeff Connolly for $300. Tierney only wanted $150 for it, so Bob had $150 of beer money that night. Don't tell Jim Tierney this. "Oh, is this going to be in a movie?" I think he only sold the case. This guy wanted just the cases for the legs. That's what he wanted, because he toured the world, and you can't find... This stuff was made in the 1960s. You can't walk into Daddy's Junkie and buy this shit. You know, Tierney had it. We had it under Tierney's tutelage. And Jeff Connolly stood next to me that night, and we're going to do a song, "Don't Give It Up Now," one of the greatest rock and roll songs ever recorded. And I look at Jeff Connolly, and I said, "Jeff, I don't want..." Jeff Connolly is a cross between, let's say, James Brown and question mark and the Mysterians. I think that's a pretty good assessment of how he sings. And I said, "Jeff, I don't know the words of the song." And he looked at me, he slapped me in the shoulder. I think he was high on something. He wasn't drinking. He said, "You think I know the words to that song?" So I just did what he did. Say, up now. That's all I had to do. And the place went ape shit. We got a pitcher of beer, so that was good. That was good enough for me. I got to play with the keyboard player for the Liars. He sat in with Gandhi's Lunchbox. Maybe Joe Satriani has sat in with several people in town. I don't know. I don't like Joe Satriani, but, you know. It's like that. I have 2 other stories I want to tell. They both involve Market Square Day. I'm going to try to make it brief. It's Market Square Day. I don't know what year it is. It's a little later in the history of Market Square Day. I'm walking down Market Street, and I'm walking by the Portsmouth Brewery. There's a van sitting there. I'm on the other side of the street. Several people jump out of the van and abduct me. Those people would be Bill Exidius. I don't think McCormick was involved. I think McGarry might have been involved. And this is like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, Market Square Day. There are like 10,000 people around. I'm hauled into the back of their van. They got like 7 bongs going at the same time. And at this time in my life, I didn't really smoke marijuana that much. You know, that was my college years in Nashville. And I'm hauled into this. It was like a Cheech and Chong friggin' movie. You know, The Chain. Just, you couldn't breathe. Marijuana, marijuana, marijuana. It was a big guy named Muty who was their roadie, who's passed away now. I don't remember his real name. I want to give him a shout out. That guy he saved, when those guys would go up to, when Fly Spinach Fly would go to Plymouth, New Hampshire, yeah, they all thought they were gay, and the jocks would want to beat the shit out of them. Yeah, you had Muty next to you. You didn't have to worry about nothing. He was a big man, classy guy. I don't know his real name. You'll have to ask some of the other people involved here. Scott, thank you. I only knew him through the crew. And then I went, the times I sang with Fly Spinach Fly downstairs at the brewery, I would be tossed around like a rag doll. I'd always do Semper Fi, a couple others. And the songs weren't particularly musical or in the tenor of my fantastic voice. But I could have do Semper Fi, and I could out-sing those bastards any day of the week. And next thing I know, I'd be hoisted around by the crowd and being carried out, usually out the door by the bouncers. Those were good times. And honestly, Spinach brought the heat. I mean, I don't know how else to put it. They didn't lay anything back. And Bill X, who couldn't sing or play an instrument, is still one of my favorite performers of all time. Bill Exidius, I consider him to be one of the greatest performers in the history of the local music scene. Couldn't sing, couldn't play an instrument. He couldn't even swing the friggin' baton so well. But he was a character, And there was something, and their music was very different than the music I was doing in my band. But there was something about the personalities involved. We'd all give each other crap and just make fun of each other. But I always respected those cats, much like the Queers. Another Market Square Day, 3 years earlier. We had played Market Square Day one day. Not a good gig. We got paid $500. That's not bad. But it's a bunch of little kids. We brought a huge, John, were you there? We brought this huge yellow weather balloon that we had written all kinds of, peace, love, and understanding kind of things. Gandhi's was a little hippie. Well, we were hippies. And we kicked it around in the yard. Next year we decided we didn't have nothing to do with Market Square Day. We did the anti-Market Square Day party. It was a barn party out in back of what was formerly the Portsmouth Herald. It was the Littlefield Lumber Building. We rehearsed in a garage bay right near that. And we went and we cleaned this place out. And it was an old lumber building, and there were nails, there was stuff. And the guys that lived there at the time, who were sign makers, these are people who were off the grid. These are the people we rented our practice space from. They were off the grid. They were sign makers, they were boat makers, they were craftsmen, but I didn't even know if they paid rent there, really. And we threw a party there. Anti-Market Square Day barn party. And we cleaned it up quite well. We brought in this really shitty PA. At that point, our bass player, Scott Wilcox, was not with us because he has a t-shirt shop in Maine, and Donnie Wolford had this old school PA. And the speakers weren't that good. It wasn't a professional PA particularly. And this barn was really quite large. And we cleaned it all up nice, and we figured, maybe 50, 25 people would show up. And that night, at the end of that night, I remember giving Joe King $2,000. We asked the Queers to play, and they were just breaking, because the Queers couldn't buy a gig in Portsmouth. And they were our favorite band, and Joe was a friend, and I happen to think were better than anything else that was going on around here at this time, including Gandhi's, and we were kind of heading towards our end. I think the Choosy Moms opened. So if you could interview some of the members of the Choosy Moms, I think they opened. We went on last. Queers went on in the middle. And in the crowd was a bunch of punk rockers from Exeter, from all over the Northeast, and a bunch of bikers and just complete people we didn't know. We had no security. We're charging people $5 a head. There was at least 700 people in that room. All right? And I was scared because I was kind of responsible. And then I went up and we did our set. We played 5 songs. There was a paddler. To give you the setup, this is a barn. If you went in back of the Portsmouth Herald, I don't remember that street, there's a little building on the front street. Now it's some type of mineral building or something. But this barn sits back from the street. And now it's all chain linked off because there's a business in there. But back then it was wide open. And there was a padlock on the front door. And I remember we were into like our 6th song and I heard a snap. And all I saw was blueies as far as the eye could see. The SWAT team was there. There was 300. Whoever was a Portsmouth on duty for the Portsmouth Police Department that night was at my gig. And I stood there and I turned around. We were 6 songs in. And I was like, thank you very much. We're Gandhi's Lunchbox. Good night. Be good. Drive safe. Some kid drove into a house that night. I can't be responsible for 700 people, much less the people who were brought out of there with broken arms, broken legs, busted noses. It was like a Dead Kennedy show in the friggin' 70s in Boston because there were rednecks and punks. Chris Elliott, who was a very famous musician, his brother got his nose broken. I heard later, because I'm on stage. I'm just trying to make sure nobody dies. You know what I mean? That was my job that night. But I'll never forget when I peeled that dough off to Joe King. He may be playing in Japan tonight and not get paid as much as we got paid that day. That was an underground. It was something we just did on our own. It was our practice space. The guys who owned the practice said, let's have a party. Let's have a party on Market Square Day. Let's just have the best bands in town rock their fucking balls off. And we did. And it happened. I don't think that'll happen ever again. I don't know. Maybe, you know. Chris Griner's doing good work, man. He's working this 3SR space, man, and that could happen. He doesn't rock as hard as the Queers and Gandhi's Lunchbox did. We didn't even get to rock. We played 6 songs and had to go home because the police showed up. Wasn't the first time, wasn't the last time, you know what I mean? Cops used to bust up our practice space all the time. We paid $200 so the Queers could play an hour in our basement because they couldn't get a gig in town. Tell Joe King I said that. He knows it. It was all about the community, though, you know what I mean? I'm not bragging. I'm not telling schools out of tail here. I mean, this is what it was like. We were all friends. I mean, in fact, I'm walking down the street. Next thing I know, I'm being bonged by 17 sides by spinach. It's kind of how things used to be. Looking back on it, it seems a little strange to me, but I wouldn't trade it for the world. Wouldn't trade it for the world. Or my time in Nashville, you know, playing with the punk bands, but this was more a sense of community. There was never a scene in Nashville. There was never a scene in Manchester. There was never a scene in Concord. There was never a scene in Littleton, New Hampshire. Dover has a scene, but it's Portsmouth's scene. It's the same scene, you know?
Awesome.
Ellsworth, Maine. That's a killer scene. I don't know if they have a scene there or not. They have great folk music there. All right. I just came in to tell those 2 stories, and I might have digressed a little bit. Those are the 2 stories that I didn't tell you. I did not tell you those 2 stories in the previous interview, did I?
One of them you told part of it, but not much.
The big party?
No, actually, that one I'd never heard. The one about Fly pulling into the van.
All right, I might have.
But I like how you brought Scott in there because he was actually.
He was a big part of that scene.
Yeah.
And you know, you would need Bill X to tell that story. Well, they had Bill. This is after Drew Webster had left. And they had Tom Arno as their singer, who was actually gay. Whoop-de-fucking-do. I live in Portsmouth, you know. I'm going to a wedding with a gay man. He asked me as his date. My wife is pissed because he's so cute. You know? You kidding me? That's nothing. That's just... But apparently in Plymouth, New Hampshire, that's something. We played that place. It was called the... It was on the railroad tracks. I can't remember the name of the club. They all were asked from the Grateful Dead, and this was Gandhi's days. And Fuzzy could play the Dead outstandingly because he was a hippie. He could also play the guitar like ringing a friggin' bell. And we did Sugar Magnolia as Slayer would play Sugar Magnolia. And I'll never forget this. I can't remember. Down Under, or something like that. It was the same place that Spinach got in their jam up there. We didn't ever got in jam up there. On Jupiter 2 we did, but that's a different story. That was my birthday, and I almost got naked, and my theremin didn't work. But we did Sugar Magnolia, and we had never performed this song ever. And Bob Ford, Wiz, and Scotty had never played the song. And Chris starts playing Sugar Magnolia, and it's like, Sugar Magnolia, blossom blooming, it's just, doot, doot. And then, down by the river. You know, I would just do shit like that. But that's where they got in that jam, and friggin' they called, they heard that somebody in the band was gay. They go, obviously, it's Bill X. So all these friggin' monstrous, Plymouth is a weird town. I don't know it that well. We were always treated well when we played there. So I'm not going to speak poorly about the town of Plymouth, New Hampshire, but there's a lot of athletes that work, that go to school there. It's kind of a physical education college where people are probably not as enlightened as in the communities that we live in. And I don't want to beat the shit out of Bill X. And Bill X is about my size, and I wouldn't fight him or wrestle him. He's Greek, for Christ's sake. He's probably one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. They invented wrestling, the Greeks. But Scott was there. And they played 3 songs that night. They had a guarantee of $800 back then because Spinach was the friggin' balls. They took the money and went. They played 3 songs. And Scott was just throwing people off the vans. Well, all these football players. You kidding me? That guy was enormous. He also used to work at a strip club in Kittery, Maine, where I used to see him on occasion. It was a short-lived place. I used to work in Kittery, Maine. Sometimes I would stop on the way home and have a beer and look at the pretty ladies. And it was always nice to see Scott because I always felt safe around him. He was an outstanding gentleman. No BS. And you know, that's the thing about the scene. Even the people who are BSers, they couldn't get away with it. There's no BS in this scene, in my opinion. If you did, you were gone. That's my opinion. You know, the people I know, you know, Spinach, Bob House, who later became Scissor Fight or whatever. I've been on stage in Boston with Scissor Fight, singing I Fucked 'Em All by the Dwarves, a song that we used to do, me and Jay and Roger in a little band called Dildozer Punk Band Army. And we used to do all these punk rock covers. The idea of the band was to only do songs that had fuck in the title. So we did Drink, Fight, and Fuck by Gigi, I Fucked 'Em All, Fuck You by the DOA. I'm probably forgetting some. And there's a Scissor Fight EP that pretty much reprises what we did back then. And it's really good. Whenever I go see, well, I just happened to see Scissor Fight. I actually went to see, ironically enough, me and my wife went to the Blue Man Group, which Jay, who is in Scissor Fight now, plays in that. He plays in the the pit band, or they're actually not in pit, they're up in a loft. Ironically enough, then after the show, we had a little hotel room in Boston, and we're going to go see a show. I think Murgatroyd might have been playing at TT the Bears that night. We had a Russian cab driver who didn't really know where he was going. And I just said, I'm back at Fenway Park, because I'd seen. Suzanne thought she was going to go see Murgatroyd. And we went to see Scissor Fight instead. And the place was banged out. It was the big room. It probably doesn't exist anymore. It's on Queensbury Street. I can't even remember the name of the club. It used to be a very famous club back there. It wasn't the Rat. It wasn't the Channel. It wasn't Cantones. It was this place next to Fenway, and they were on stage. It was freezing cold. They had this big, huge, the green coat with the fuzz. What do they call those things? An anorak or whatever. What you used to wear in junior high to stay warm. I went right up front, and I saw some seeing scissor fights. I'm doing this. Next thing I know, Chris, known to most people as Iron Lung, I'm the only person who calls him Chris other than his parents, grabs me, because he's a big dude, grabs me by the collar. He said, we're doing that dwarf song that we learned from your EP or your tape. I'm like, okay. Yeah, I fucked them all. And the Guts started doing it after that too. It's a good song. Good song for a punk band to do. And afterwards, I was interviewed by Japanese film crews who were there to document what it's like to live in New Hampshire. You live under a mountain with bombs. You kill bears with bare hand. You kill a moose with a knife. And I'm like, no. It's kind of like here, but Scissor Fight had built this mythology surrounding him, and that's mostly Chris's doing. He was a brilliant cat. Nobody knows where he is. He's a guy to interview.
We're going to try and get him, and we have 15 seconds left on the tape.
All done. I just want to give you some. I want to juice it up a bit. I know. I gave you.
Bring you back to your wife.
I gave you kind of the facts and figures in the other interview.
Right.
I just want to give you a little juice.
That's great.
That's all.
Sorry, Mark. I gave him a shot of Jaeger.
Don't matter. Hey, I went to Ireland. I went to Ireland. I didn't have to kiss the friggin' Blarney Stone, my friend.
Hey, Tom, can you sign the white poster?
I
out
did.
there? Oh, you
I did already.
Cool. Thank you.
Hold on.
All right.
Oh, how do we get out of here? Is this locked?
Push hard.
Push hard. See you later.